Get ready to discover a place where some customs might seem pretty unusual to outsiders. In Finland, stepping into a room completely naked and in total silence isn't part of some secret ritual. It's just the Finnish sauna, a tradition deeply rooted in local culture. And that's just one of the fascinating things you'll notice there. But Finland offers much more than just freezing temperatures. The landscapes are breathtaking, education is world-class, and the feeling of safety is almost unbelievable. After learning a bit more about this destination, you might wonder, would you be up for living in a place where privacy is sacred and naked sauna sessions are the norm? Or would you run the moment temperatures dropped below freezing? You land in Finland expecting warm hugs and casual chats everywhere you go. But then comes the surprise. Here, people really value their personal space, and silence usually beats small talk. At the bus stop, no one strikes up a conversation. In line at the grocery store, a casual chat might earn you some suspicious looks. But this isn't rudeness. It's just the Finnish way of respecting privacy. What's interesting is that despite being so reserved, Finland consistently tops rankings for honesty. It's common to find flower stands without anyone around. You just pay yourself using a simple QR code. No turnstiles, no cameras, no constant surveillance. It might seem weird to someone coming from a more outgoing culture, but here it works perfectly. At the end of the day, Finland isn't about being cold or unfriendly. It's about appreciating silence, being straightforward when needed, and trusting each other in daily life. It's a unique experience that often leaves visitors somewhere between puzzled and impressed. And it's exactly this mix, distance in conversations yet closeness in honesty, that makes the place so fascinating. If you've already noticed Finns aren't exactly big talkers, now it's time to get to know more about where and how they live. Get ready to find out that Finland has rules for pretty much everything, even your apartment door. Want to change it? You'll need permission. And chances are the answer will be no, because if that door has been there for 100 years, it's supposed to stay right where it is for another 100, unchanged. This passion for tradition shows up everywhere when it comes to housing. In Helsinki, for example, rent usually ranges from 800 to 1,000 euros. Not cheap, but not crazy expensive compared to other European countries. Typically, that includes heating, water, electricity, and even a shared laundry room, which helps you save both time and money. There's also a gym in the building, so excuses for skipping workouts get a little harder to justify. Besides that, there's usually a community room where you can cook or chat, if anyone decides to start a conversation. And if you need anything fixed, just talk to the building management. They'll handle it right away, as long as everything stays exactly as it was. Need a new fridge? It better look exactly like the old one. Love constantly redecorating? You might want to reconsider. The real highlight, though, is the communal sauna found in most buildings. Stepping into a Finnish sauna feels like something out of a movie, but silence is king inside. If you're lucky enough to meet someone interesting there, you'll need to deal with an almost solemn atmosphere. So don't expect lively conversations. Ultimately, your main concern might just be keeping your towel firmly in place, especially if there's a 6'7" Finn sitting right next to you. Have you heard that Finland is a paradise of high salaries and easy jobs? You might want to reconsider that idea. Here, a lifeguard earns about 2,000 euros a month. Sounds decent, but when rent takes away 1,000 euros, you're left with just half for everything else. And if you're aiming for a higher income, brace yourself. The government keeps a close eye on what goes into your bank account. Taxes are progressive, meaning the more you earn, the more the government takes. If you're making around 10,000 euros, for example, nearly half could go straight to taxes. The goal is to keep most people within a similar income range, avoiding big gaps. So, if your dream is to stack millions and live like a millionaire, it might be time to rethink those ambitions. Finland is known for having one of the best-rated education systems in the world. Basic education there is free and mandatory for 9 years. And the goal isn't just memorizing things you'll soon forget. Instead, it's about really learning, without that whole cramming formulas approach that almost nobody uses in real life. And forget about stressful entrance exams. Getting into college doesn't become a battle of survival for students. Another big difference is how teachers are respected. In Finland, teaching is a highly competitive and admired profession. Teachers are well paid, and only the most qualified candidates make it into the field. If you're looking for a place truly focused on learning, Finland is the place to go. But if your goal is to become a millionaire, keep in mind a big chunk of your earnings will end up going straight to the government. And that's not all. Finland's surprises go far beyond education and taxes. The culture has customs that might seem pretty unusual to outsiders, and there's also the famous sauna tradition. Curious to learn more? Before you keep watching, subscribe to the channel and share this video with that friend who's dreaming of moving to Europe, or doesn't mind paying high taxes. After that, let me know in the comments if you'd be okay living somewhere where taxes can reach nearly 50%. Would you go for it, or would you run the other way? When people talk about Finland, many picture snow-covered landscapes and postcard-perfect scenery. But if you decide to move there, the intense cold is just the beginning. Days seem to shrink during winter, and sunlight disappears so quickly you barely even notice it. It's a routine that makes many people question whether facing this reality is really worth it, especially when temperatures keep messing with your plans. The biggest issue isn't just the icy wind or slippery streets, it's the darkness. In some regions, the sun barely makes an appearance during the coldest months. You wake up in darkness, head to work in darkness, and come home without seeing any daylight at all. It's like life switches into night mode, demanding patience and plenty of determination. Still, some people get used to it, find it fascinating, and discover ways to enjoy the season. But don't fool yourself. Living with this kind of climate is for those willing to face long nights and truly test their endurance. Have you ever wondered how a place can be called the happiest in the world without people dancing in the streets or hugging strangers on every corner? Well, Finland keeps winning that title. But the real story is pretty different from what many people imagine. Instead of non-stop partying, what puts Finland at the top of the rankings is the efficiency of its public system. The idea of happiness in these surveys isn't really about constant joy. It's about stability. The government actually works, corruption is low, healthcare doesn't leave you desperate over medical bills, and education won't bankrupt you. It's a place where people aren't constantly stressed about their next impossible bill or dealing with daily injustices. You've probably heard that Finland is one of the happiest places on earth, right? But is everything really sunshine and rainbows? The country also struggles with high rates of depression and alcoholism. Many people there feel lonely, especially in winter when the day ends almost before it starts. It's like sunlight is a rare event, and any hint of human warmth needs to be fully appreciated. What's interesting, though, is how Finns view what we call happiness. If you ask a local whether they're happy, you're most likely to get an answer like kind of. Happiness there isn't usually explosive or overly expressive. It's more subtle, like, I'm good, nothing's going wrong, so everything's fine. In other words, Finland isn't exactly a paradise of excitement, but rather a place where basic worries aren't constantly on your mind. In the end, maybe that's the real secret behind Finnish well-being, the peace of not constantly having to put out fires. So here's the question. Is that sense of calm worth a routine that might sometimes feel dull or lacking excitement? Would you be up for a quieter life, or would you prefer the adrenaline rush of chaos? When people talk about peculiar customs, Finland always comes up. Aside from strict taxes and weather that can seriously mess with anyone's mind, the country has some practices that leave visitors scratching their heads. A classic example is the sauna. Over there, saunas aren't limited to fancy spas or gyms. They're considered almost a basic right. You'll find saunas in apartment buildings, offices, police stations, and even in parliament. Seriously. Finns might debate new laws while relaxing in the steam. It just shows how something so normal for them can be surprising for outsiders, creating a major culture shock. But it's not only about where the saunas are, it's the whole culture around this relaxation ritual. Stepping into a sauna isn't just for leisure. It's part of daily life, almost like a purification and social bonding ritual. While the rest of the world might reserve it for special occasions, in Finland, it's as routine as having a cup of coffee or going grocery shopping. Imagining a parliament with a sauna might sound weird, but in local logic it makes total sense. Big decisions and important conversations often happen during these informal meetings in an environment that encourages openness and dialogue. And as bizarre as it might seem, it reflects how Finns approach life, putting well-being and a collective mindset first. If you're not a big fan of sweating it out with strangers, brace yourself for some surprising news. In Finnish saunas, there are no towels or swimsuits. It's exactly how we came into the world. No shame at all. Some places do have separate times for men and women, but the idea stays the same. If you're going in, leave your embarrassment at the door. So picture this. You arrive super excited to experience the local culture, open the door, and there's a group of Thor-like Finns wearing nothing but holding beers, chatting casually like they're at a neighborhood meeting. And there you are, desperately trying to keep your eyes locked on some random spot, unsure if you should stare at the wall or risk saying hi just to seem a little less out of place. Have you ever thought about how, in some places, faith might come with a monthly bill? In Finland, members of the Lutheran Church have to pay a specific church tax, around 10 to 15 euros a month. It's as if, on top of the usual financial commitments many believers already have, there's an official fee collected by the state. This raises an interesting question. Do you accept this church premium plan, or would you rather cancel your subscription to save money? Over there, all it takes is filing some paperwork and you can officially quit being a member. It's easy, but it's still pretty strange to think about how much your faith could cost you each month. Maybe that explains why Finland has one of the lowest rates of religiosity in Europe. After all, when there are more numbers on your bill than words in the sermon, plenty of people decide to leave. So here's something to think about. If your country adopted something similar, how many people would stick around? Can you imagine a place where nobody locks their bikes, where there are stores without employees and supermarkets without cashiers? That's exactly how it is in Finland. People trust each other enough to pick up a flower, scan a QR code, and pay by themselves. There's no supervision, cameras, or warning signs, and yet almost nobody takes advantage. In other countries, this probably wouldn't last 2 days. People would grab stuff without paying or tear down the whole setup just to see if there was money inside. But in Finland, honesty seems to be built into everyone's DNA. Walking away without paying would break an invisible deal, and the shame would be way worse than any punishment. Here, if someone leaves a flower pot on the sidewalk, there's a good chance it'll vanish in a flash. But there it stays right where it is, waiting patiently for the next honest customer. It's a culture that values trust and responsibility to the extreme. The big question is, could you live this way, or would you miss finding your own little shortcut around things? If you made it this far, comment Finland to show you've survived this journey. But honestly speaking, living in Finland is kind of like being in a stable, predictable relationship. It's safe, peaceful, and well organized, but sometimes the routine gets heavy and you start craving a little adventure. Is it worth it? Only you can decide. And if you're into exploring different cultures, check out the next video showing up on your screen. It'll blow your mind in ways you won't believe. See you there.